Courtside the Virtual Hardwood, it's the NLSC podcast, episode number 334. Andrew with you once again. I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. My co-host is Derek. You probably know him by that name by now, but you may also know him in the forum as D43 and D4384 on Twitter.
Happy to be here, and also happy to see that we have some NBA 2K21 news to talk about. It's good stuff.
Yes, we have some good news, some dismal news, and some just plain news. I think people will find out which is which by our tone and our opinions and the subject matter at hand, of course. But yeah, it's August now, so we are pretty much right in the middle of the preview season. Maybe that trickle is going to start coming through again.
Yeah, the newest news is very promising. I want to say it gets me excited. It's stuff that I've talked about on prior podcasts. But I mean, we won't really know, what to expect until we actually see gameplay footage, because there's a lot of talk in preview season. There always is.
Always,
hoping to see some gameplay footage soon, and I think we will within the next couple of weeks for at least NBA 2K21 for the PC and the PS4 and Xbox One.
Well, with current gen coming out basically a month away, September, since we are in October now, then August rather, getting ahead of myself, very much there. But with that coming out in September, we have basically a month to go. So yeah, they're really going to have to start showing something at this point, because they're starting the pre-orders. Pre-orders have already started, obviously. And yeah, so the news is starting to come through. First little tidbit comes courtesy of NBA 2K TV, and Agent 00 was conducting an interview for 2K TV there, talking to Mike Wang, Baluba, as he is commonly known in the community and on Twitter, at Baluba. The gameplay director of NBA 2K21 had some few juicy tidbits to share. First things first, people may be wondering how they're actually developing the game, because obviously the pandemic is causing a lot of problems with shutdowns and alternate plans and solutions. But development is apparently still work from home. They're actually now working at 100% efficiency, apparently. But yeah, so that's the thing, Derek. They're all working from home on it, which is not really surprising given the circumstances.
Yeah, getting up to 100% efficiency is fantastic, considering how much collaboration must exist in that environment, in the development environment, and to even be able to have all the technology and tools at your disposal in each home and whatnot. So I find that to be incredibly impressive. I wonder, in the back of my mind, if that could hurt any of the development. You know what I mean? A little bit less communication or in less collaboration maybe, or issues with some of the technology and whatnot. But, operating at 100% efficiency makes me think that they have it down. So
it's definitely good news in that respect. I imagine a lot of Zoom chats happening with the various members of the development team working from home. I mean, if you're on Zoom these days, you're going to have to wear pants at least, I suppose. So that's one advantage from working from home that has been taken away from the current situation. But definitely good news, all jokes aside. Here's an interesting tidbit as well. The current gen and next gen are being worked on by two completely different studios with under the 2K umbrella. And I did figure that there would be two different teams, much the same way as previous years. I know when NBA Live was going to the 7th generation with that is the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, of course, that they split the team in two. So you had the current gen, what was then current gen, and then what was then next gen, splitting in two. So no surprise there, and seems like the smart thing to do.
Yeah, I'd say don't be fooled. Two different studios doesn't mean that entirely a different crew is working on the new game. Like, as in, I can guarantee there's people that have been working on the series for years that were brought over to work on the PS5.
Oh,
title.
For sure.
It's just two different teams working on the two different games, but and split up that way. But I actually find that awesome. I think that's a good idea, and I think that it makes me think that, and they alluded to this, that we're going to just get a completely new experience with NBA 2K21 for PS5, and that's pretty exciting.
It is, and it's what we need to see. We need to see that refreshment, and we'd like to see some improvements on current gen as well, of course. But it is getting to obviously the end of that generation being current, so it's kind of tapped out, I suppose. The resources are definitely going to be going into next gen one would imagine, at any rate. And something that Mike mentioned was that it's going to have everything the same as current gen as far as modes, features, etc., but done better. Now, that's very good news, because if you go back to 2K14, and we covered this on a previous podcast, and it's been a point of discussion in the forum, and probably at OS and on Reddit too, is if you do flash back to NBA 2K14 for PS4 and X1, that was, I don't want to say bare bones, because that's something I'd more say about NBA Live on this past generation. But 2K14 didn't have the deep roster editing, as far as it didn't have creative player, and MyTEAM replaced Association, and it wasn't quite the solution everybody wanted, which is why My League came along the next year. My Career had it had the story mode, but it was still kind of not as deep as it would become. It wasn't quite as deep. It lost a lot of the modes that last gen 2K14, the PC version, and thus the 360 and PS3 version had, and a lot of those modes and features were gone. It sounds like this time around they're avoiding that, and so much the better. That is really good news.
Yeah, so we talked about this several times on various podcasts and whatnot. 2K14, and there's a couple other things out of that document that we're going to be talking about on this podcast that just, from 2K statements that gets me really excited. But NBA 2K14, you could only have like one custom roster, remember?
Yep.
You only had like 5 saves that you could use for My Career, like a season or whatnot, and the menus were plain, and you couldn't create players, and the editing options were limited and all that stuff. But what it came down to with NBA 2K14 and why it was such a successful launch on PS4 and Xbox One was the fact that the gameplay was fun for the majority of the population. People put on that game, and not only did it look great, but they wanted to post their highlights, and the game was tight on the controllers, and it just felt good. Even though the gameplay was a lot of the gameplay was borrowed from 2K13, and very similar to 2K14 on the PC, which was a last-gen port. So I think that what's exciting about what they said is that they are giving us a new gameplay experience, but also, promising us all of this depth. And that's going to be, like you said, a different type of launch than what they did with NBA 2K14, because NBA 2K14 did not have the depth.
Not at all, and it's very welcome news. The actual quote here is, everything you have in the current gen version, but so much more. So, I mean, we can talk about hype, we can talk about PR. We've talked before about some of the, let's be diplomatic and say, misleading statements that have come during previous seasons. But it does sound like they've learned from the last launch, the last generation. That and as you say, 2K14 was still a pretty good game and enjoyed and well reviewed and everything. But it was that part of it was an issue. So I am glad that has changed. And something else that's worth highlighting is that he said that movement will feel very different on current gen versus next gen. And you and I have gone into detail many times about how we felt that the current motion system introduced in 2K18 and tweaked a little bit over the last couple of years for 19 and 20, how that hasn't felt as good. We've both talked about going back to 16, 17, which I recently did to get some screenshots for an article, and once again was struck by how much I preferred the movement, even if it's just feathering the stick to get players to just edge a little bit behind the three-point line or something like that, how it feels much more responsive, much better, less exaggerated than some of the movements in the current motion system. So for next gen, if that does bring a new feel, and preferably a better one, then yeah, that is also great news.
Yeah, and in the part that they had stated, they're trying to, and I'm sure you're going to get into this in a second, but they're making it more fun. And to get rid of some of the irritations, they alluded to that, where they're finding the right balance between realism and fun. And I can't tell you how excited that makes me. We've been talking about this for a while, as far as obviously, just to go on what you said. Yes, the movement has been shoddy over the last 3 years since they moved to the new motion system. They need to fix some of the foot planning, change of direction mechanics, the two-man animations. So when they say that, they've revamped movement and it's going to be a whole new movement system, that gets me pretty excited. That doesn't even make me nervous, because I want them to move in a different direction. right? So even if this is not as sharp as it needs to be on the at the get-go, it will be a new experience, and it will probably be ironed out in a year or so.
The freshness will probably count for something. The fact that it simply feels like it's moving in the right direction, no pun intended, would certainly be, again, a welcome change, even if it's not, as you say, perfect, because that's a big ask for the very first incarnation of a new motion system.
Exactly. And, as far as the fun part, as far as finding that balance, I wanted to bring up a point in kind of a comparison. So recently I picked up MLB 08, the show, for PlayStation 3. And I also have MLB The Show for PlayStation 4. And I have the newest one, MLB The Show 20. And the gameplay on MLB 08, The Show, is, for me, 10 times more fun. It is loose. The fielding is more responsive. It's still authentic, and it still looks good. But they found the perfect combination of fun and realism, packed it into a game, and it's just absolute blast. I don't even love baseball, and I love playing that game, and so does my brother, and he's not a baseball guy either. But that's what I'm talking about. When you go into MLB 20, the MLB The Show 20, the fielding doesn't feel as responsive. It's more complicated. The players are overly animated. It's not as reactive in general on the sticks, etc. Sure, it looks great, but the gameplay isn't fun. So the thing that I want to see, and that line got me really excited that they're looking to add more fun to the game and find that balance with the realism, is I'm looking for that type of experience that we had when we used to play the older games like 2K11, 2K8. That experience of pick up and play and have a blast. Like, you just have a blast no matter what you're playing.
It's a great point, because my knee-jerk reaction when I saw that was, they're going to make further tweaks to the realism that's going to go in the wrong direction in the name of quote unquote fun. Air quotes around fun. What the park cheeses think of fun. That would be my only concern. But you bring that up. You bring up the point of going back to how games used to be, how it really was about the on-court experience, the between the lines experience, and how it was that great balance between realism and fun. It was realistic but also fun in the same way. It felt good to play that realistic game of basketball that inspired and trying to capture the spirit of the actual sport, and that's certainly something we did see, and we talked about that a couple of shows ago with the sliding scale of realism, and sliding scale of what is a sim gamer. So it kind of I kind of had an elitist knee-jerk reaction there, and I thought, it's, and I do have my concerns. I have my concerns as far as online, especially because some of the things, as I said, with the park cheeses and things, if they're looking to go in the wrong direction with fun, and they say, what is fun, and if it goes too far away from a realistic game that isn't properly balanced. But if they get that fun with the balance and a good balance of both realism and on the sticks feel and everything, then that is definitely something to be, at the very least, cautiously optimistic about. So you bring a great point there that's actually got me thinking, well, Andrew, you kind of got a bit elitist there for a second. Two shows after you start, we were talking about the sliding scale of sim gamers, and I fell right back into old habits. But no, that is a great point.
I want to make a point too, though. I know I'm being optimistic, but like you said, I'm being cautiously optimistic too, because I understand what's happened over the last couple of years and whatnot, especially with like 2K20's implementation of Takeover, in the way the MyTEAM cards are, how outrageous they are, and stuff like that. If they're talking about stuff like that, and they're putting more like our overpowering arcade elements into the game, like things like Takeover, I definitely, I'm cautious. I know that that's a possibility. They have a track record recently of trying things like that. So I guess it's what is your interpretation of fun? And I think what got me optimistic about it is the wording they chose, the balance of fun and realism, because that's what I look at games like NBA 2K8 and, NBA 2K11, 2K13 and MLB The Show 08 and stuff like that. I look at those games as that's how I would word it. It's a balance of realism and fun. So that's how I would word it, and that's what I hope they're interpreting that like the same way that I am.
And that's where the caution comes in, the cautiously optimistic part of it, absolutely. One of the examples that was cited by Beluba, was throwing the ball away, the canned turnovers on cherry-picked passes. And you see this a lot online. You not being an online gamer may not see it as much because it doesn't happen as much in the offline space. But in online, a lot of people cherry-pick, and there is that long outlet pass. And a lot of those long outlet passes are very catchable passes. They're not bad passes, but it goes straight into a canned moment where the recipient can't catch it, even though it's clearly a pretty good pass. They get pulled away in a different direction. You can feel it on the sticks. You're it's not going in the direction that you were heading in at the time. So you can tell when the canned moment is coming, and then it comes into a turnover where usually a long passer goes right out of bounds at the other baseline. And it's one of those things that probably should happen for both balance and realism, but at the same time it happens in a way that is very unrealistic. That is very canned and contrived, I should say. Not totally unrealistic, but certainly it's very hard to capture that element of realism. The turnovers that do happen and errors are something that do happen realistically, but at the same time they're happening too often and in very contrived ways. Talked about this many times on the podcast, including touching on it in the last couple of weeks when we've been talking about sim and realism. But that's one thing that I was quite glad to hear as far as an example of what they're trying to do. And they mentioned that that's something that's not fun, those canned turnovers on cherry-picked passes, and they want to fix that. So as long as it's, again, that it's not overpowered, that there's still some semblance of balance, that it's not too easy to exploit the system, that things like takeover aren't in the game or they're properly balanced so that they're more of a mechanic that works as intended, then yeah, so much the better. But I do like the sound of that in theory. It's a good way to go, and it's funny that they're saying that the focus this year was on how 2K can be made enjoyable, and it goes back to some things that we've been talking about on the show, specifically the people who are saying that they buy 2K out of obligation. And it's funny how it also ties into not just that, but something we were thinking about talking about this week as far as NBA players calling out the game on Twitter and saying how much they're not enjoying the game. So it's not just us. You can't just say it's people who don't know basketball or never played basketball. There are actually professional basketball players talking crap about 2K on social media. So it's not something they can dismiss as, you and I like to think that we're pretty knowledgeable about basketball, virtual and otherwise, but at the end of the day, they can say to us, well, you're not professional players, but NBA players are literally going on Twitter. Was it Josh Hart? Was he the one that we saw? Or no, De'Aaron Fox was one as well.
Yeah, Josh Hart's just one of many.
Yeah. So they've gone on there and they've made a lot of the same complaints that the rest of us have made. Maybe it carries a bit more weight because they've got the blue tick and they, again, being professional athletes, professional basketball players. But a lot of people have said that they buy the game out of obligation and wanting to play a new basketball game, but not necessarily a love of the brand or even genuine enjoyment of the game anymore. So I think they're addressing a problem there that's become very prominent in recent years. So it is, again, very interesting that they've used that language and the word enjoyable, given the reaction of not just gamers, but certainly prominent people who are professional basketball players, and that sentiment that people are buying 2K because, yes, we're buying 2K, but we're not necessarily loving 2K. And even though the game is still doing well and selling well, that's still probably a concern that they're looking at and thinking, well, if anything does go wrong, we could see people boycott. And we have seen the drop in recurrent revenue. So people who are enjoying the game might be willing to spend a few extra bucks. But if you're already feeling very negative about the brand and the experience that you're getting from it, you're not going to necessarily pre-order. You're not going to necessarily get the game until late. I think a lot of the people who are picking up the game on either on sale, post-release, or getting it free through PlayStation Plus as it was last month, and similar deals on Xbox One, when it becomes free to play or free to keep. So they are really addressing a problem there, and it's interesting that they're actually using the word enjoyable in that sense.
There's a couple things. So first off, to touch really quick, I don't have to play online to see that the outlet pass issue. So basically what happens is my brother and I, we all play on the same team.
Of course,
and
yeah.
My brother Nick and I, we lock, and my brother Mark, he uses the rest of the players. And oftentimes when we see the rebound coming or we see a steal, like a bad pass by the computer, I usually take off. and which is what you should do in real life. If you're in defensive position and you see a steal about to happen or a rebound, you know your team's in position. It's smart to take off. So I'll take off up the floor, and they will try to outlet it to me via icon passing and whatnot, and it literally sails over my head probably over 50% of the time.
So I didn't know that happened offline as much as online. Interesting. So you know very well then.
Yeah, they go into a canned reception animation, like where they either stumble or they put their arm out and it just goes overhead.
That's the one.
And it happens all the time. And these are makeable passes. Like, we're completely alone on the other end of the floor. And it can be somebody who's a very, very good outlet passer. And it doesn't matter who it is. It still goes over the guy's head. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. And it is nice that they mentioned that and tried to and they're talking about addressing it. And that's what that's what we were talking about on many podcasts, is basically cutting down on those frustrations and making the game more loose and more fun. And the fact that, we deserve to have more control. If we make the right decision, and that pass is the right decision, and in real life that's an easy pass to make, don't take that away from us by forcing us to make a turnover because you're trying to cut down on something. So being in control is so important, and that's what I'm really hoping for, because I think we've lost that over the last 3 titles, especially for NBA 2K. As far as the enjoyable part, so and I said this to you before we started the call when we briefly discussed, what we were going to be talking about. And that's basically them admitting to the game not being as enjoyable. Yep. I don't think I've ever seen in a developer blog, in a preview season, or anything like that, them flat out saying, we need to make the game more fun. We need to make the game more enjoyable. I think that we talked about how important feedback is, and we talked about the developers taking breaks and whatnot to get away from that negative feedback, and it frustrated them a lot. But I think that I talked about this on the past one of the past podcasts. I said, they looked at this, in my opinion, as a red flag. They looked at this as we need to change our ways. We need to make the game more fun. We need to cut down on these complaints, because this year is probably the worst I have ever seen it. I think you would agree. Yeah. I think that the complaints this year, I think that the complaints about the game on all different social media platforms, going at the developers on Twitter and everything, I think that this was the height of that. And it's not a coincidence that guys like, I believe Chris Manning did, I think the Czar did. It's not a coincidence that those guys needed to take social media breaks shortly after the launch of the game. So when I hear things like, make it more enjoyable, make it more fun, that again, that makes me more excited, because I feel like, first off, I almost feel like they're listening to our podcast. Like, I mean, how often have we gone over this and talked about making memories with the games and making them more fun and more enjoyable and getting back to the roots that, made the game so fun and loose. So it's pretty cool. As far as the player outrage, so we had Josh Hart, De'Aaron Fox, I want to say maybe Kyle Kuzma, Trae Young.
Yeah. Yes. And he's one of their athletes. Like, he's been very involved with them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and you had Trae Young, and then you had a couple other players too that were saying things like, "Man, this game, they really need to fix the defense," or "Man, I'm skating everywhere," or like you have these guys going on social media saying this, and it's getting thousands and thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of impressions, and that can't look good.
No,
that can't good for NBA 2K, especially when, like you said, one of their own athletes is out on social media complaining about the game. So I think they see the writing on the wall. I think that they've seen these red flags, especially since 2K18. I think they understand also that the 2K League was not launched correctly. And I think that they'd probably want to get that back on track as well, which would mean a better gameplay experience and that better between the lines experience. So yeah, like I said, I think it's exciting, but I agree. I think when players go on social media and say stuff like that, it's always a bad look.
Doesn't do the brand any favors whatsoever. And again, they can come at you and I you or I or anybody in our position, long-time gamers, and it would be still erroneous and fallacious, foolish of them to do so, but they could play that card. You're not a pro. Who are you? You're just some gamer. Again, which would be pretty rude to say to one of their key demographic, their customers. But you can still play that card as, what do you know? What is your authority that you speak on? But when an actual NBA player comes out and says it, somebody who does play basketball at the highest level, that's hard to deny.
Oh, yeah, the other guy that was doing it was Kevin Durant, too. Kevin Durant brought it up.
Which is, again, a former 2K athlete, a cover player, two-time cover player.
Yeah, he was talking about how the fast break is, the fast break in the game is broken, and how finishing is broken and stuff like that. And that's Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
So, and also I also want to point this out because I have to laugh at this. Even like they say, oh, they're drafted, the pro 2K players, like 2K League players. If you ever watch those games or highlights of the 2K League, basically what they're doing, I'm sorry, but it's true. Basically what they're doing is they're cheesing basically the whole time. Like they're just driving into the hoop, and like there's no ball movement. It looks like this mess of a game whenever I watch the 2K League.
Yeah,
so even if somebody's quote-unquote pro, and by the way, that's not an insult to those guys playing the games. I just need to point that out. This is not their fault that the mechanics allow this.
They have to play, yeah.
Yeah, it's the game they have to play. This is the system they've been given, basically. But, they say, oh, well, he's a 2K, sports player, or he's a professional and whatnot. Go watch those games. They're a mess. So, yeah, and that's where the game has to come in and have better mechanics.
Absolutely. And again, perhaps where next gen will. I mean, I think we should temper our expectations for the current gen game. Maybe they'll find a way to get some of those improvements in. I wrote a Friday 5 a few weeks back about how next gen sometimes surprises, last gen sometimes surprises us in that way when there's a next gen game comes out with all the improvements, but sometimes last gen still is able to squeeze a few things in there as well. But I think we should temper our expectations for, especially being the PC gaming community, or a lot of PC gamers in our community with modding and whatnot. It's something we should temper our expectations for.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting NBA 2K20 for the PC to be 2K20.5.
Yeah.
It's going to be something where they want people to buy the new consoles. They want people to buy the Mamba edition. They want people to buy the new system. And whatnot. The Mamba edition would give them the PS4 and PS5 version, yes, I believe.
Which is what I'm looking at doing, yeah.
Right. But what they're going to want to do is spend most of their time on the PS5 version. They already have the bones for 2K20. 2K20, just like when we moved on to the PS4 and Xbox One platforms with 2K14, they're going to be just each year that they come out, which I think that cycle is going to be cut down. I don't think they're going to be releasing that long again on PS4 and
Agreed.
Xbox One.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. Yeah.
I think that's probably only going to be cut down. It's going to be cut down for like only a couple releases. But I think what you're going to see is basically a port of 2K20 with maybe new menus for the PC and PS4, Xbox One versions.
Well, we saw the splash screen for 2K21 posted on the official Twitter to celebrate the return of the NBA and the restart, the bubble. So everyone was kind of like, really? That's the news this week? Fortunately, we have this other tidbit thanks to NBA 2K TV. Also worth mentioning that WNBA fans, quote, will be very excited with what we bring to next gen. So it looks like they're going to be doing more there, possibly a career mode, possibly what Live was doing as far as being able to create a female player, and maybe have a career mode for WNBA, be able to play online with them as well. A deeper season mode or a full-on franchise mode for WNBA, but it sounds like they are building upon that. That is something that NBA Live failed to do when they were the first to get the WNBA in the game, of course. Well, actually, the first was NBA Street Home Court, which, again, was EA. But NBA Live did it first, but it's not about who does it first, it's about who does it best. That's something we've discussed on a number of occasions as well. That's something that we continue to push, to harp on, because that is what we believe. But that is good news for the WNBA, and the content definitely worth doing since they've got it in the game. It's nice that they haven't just put it in there and left it in there as is, because actually Kenny, I know, has an article coming out fairly soon about because he's been playing a lot of that in 2K20, the WNBA mode, some seasons of that. So the fact that they are actually going a little bit further with that is nice to hear.
Well, there's a couple things. So NBA Live launched the WNBA in almost a disrespectful way, and they not intended, I don't believe, but the way they did it, they didn't have the licensing for the coaches, so the benches were empty. They didn't have a season mode, right? So basically, what you had with the WNBA and NBA Live 19 was the teams, some of the players, because I don't think they had all the players, no coaches, and you're just like a kind of a vanilla experience. And I'm not saying they intentionally disrespected, but it was bare bones. What they had for the WNBA.
It's kind of how it goes with live in general, of course.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of just what they do now. But, the WNBA needs this. The disrespect is unbelievable to the WNBA. People trashing on the league. There was a highlights. Excuse me. Andre Iguodala said, "Put some respect on her name," and he used the player's number, and it was Ariel Powers for the Washington Mystics.
23.
I don't know if you saw this.
Yep, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, "Put some respect on number 23's name," and rightfully so. Some people were upset about it because why use her number? Why not just say her name? I mean, he probably wasn't intending to do that. Like, he probably wasn't being disrespectful, but
came out wrong.
Who else? Right, it came out wrong, and it's a sensitive situation now because of the feedback that the WNBA gets and whatnot, and how much people basically bash it. But so the Washington Mystics replied and said, "Yeah, she's great," and they showed some highlights of her, and it was her doing a hesitation, crossing over, doing a reverse layup on the baseline, which looked really nice, hitting deep threes, stuff like that. And the first comment under that video, which got like over 1,000, 2,000 likes, and people were backing this person, is he goes, "NGL, so not gonna lie, this shit, excuse me, ain't that entertaining at all." And then like with a crying face. And my comment to this, because that is incredibly disrespectful, right? So my comment to this was, hold on, what you just saw Ariel Powers do in that highlight reel is it basically mimics, it's exactly what we see in the NBA today, right? So you saw deep threes and a reverse layup on a drive, so threes and layups. And they looked really good on the highlights. And I'm like, so my question for this person is, if you're going to, and I said this in the tweet, my guess is that you just don't like basketball.
Yeah.
Right?
Or women.
How
more likely just
women.
Or
women. Right. Or both. Maybe you're really not that. You really don't like basketball. Maybe you just like dunks.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't like women. And just all the people that bashed me for that comment. And, I brought up some points in here. They say, yeah, well, you can't see Giannis, Euro step and dunk it on three people in the WNBA. And my point to them was 96% of shot attempts in the NBA are not dunks. Only 4% of attempts in a basketball game are dunks, which means and teams shoot on average between both teams about 60 to 73s per game. And so 96% of the basketball game that you're watching doesn't even have a dunk in the NBA. And people just chalk it up to, well, they can dunk. So, yeah, the WNBA can't dunk, so it's trash. But what about all the good basketball and the regular basketball stuff that's mimicked between both leagues?
Yeah.
Like the driving to the hoop, the threes, the up fake and step in for a jump shot, the baseline drives, the and ones, all of that stuff. What about all of that? Listen, I don't have a problem with people saying that they prefer the NBA. And I don't have a problem with people saying that the WNBA isn't really entertaining for them. Like they can't sit down and watch a full game. But to outright bash it and call it terrible basketball and to ignore the facts around the situation is really frustrating for me.
It is.
So they need, in my opinion, to circle back to basketball gaming, the WNBA needs to be promoted better. You and I were part of a time when the WNBA was promoted very well. You know, when the league first came out.
Yep.
And we were part of a time when it was promoted the right way and there was buzz around it and all of that stuff. They need to promote the league better. I think the 2K even focusing more on the WNBA is a good thing for the league. And in my opinion, the women that play in the league deserve it.
I agree. You know, I can't say it better than that. But one thing I will put out there is if people aren't interested in WNBA being in 2K, you don't have to play it. Like, it's there for people who are interested in it, and hopefully more people will take an interest, because Kenny's been having a blast with it, I know. But if you don't, the NBA's not going anywhere. It's still there.
Exactly. That's the point, too, and we talked about this, is people bash the way that other people play a game, but how does that mode being in the game affect you? Like, how does that option in the game affect you? You don't have to go to that option. Like, there's no requirement. Like, it's not like the Damian Lillard tutorial when you get into Live 15. Like, there's nothing that pops up, like, right when you log into the game and says, hey, you have to play the WNBA before you get into the game. Like, that's not something that you don't have to play it.
The My Career story is far more intrusive than the presence of the WNBA.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. The WNBA is just an option.
Yep.
That's
extra
all that
content,
is.
Which is what we've always said we wanted. So it's
also a skippable option. Like you can skip right over it. So yeah.
But that is good news that they're going to be doing something more with that. Be interesting to see if they actually add some WNBA players in MyTEAM, or if that's a subset of MyTEAM. Speaking of which, a few details were also confirmed about MyTEAM. Card evolution will return, and you'll have more control over how to evolve the Evo cards. That's definitely good news. That was one of the best things they did with MyTEAM this year. Having those evolution cards gave you a reason to play with them and goals and to be able to level them up. So if there's something more that you can do with that this year, then that's good news. MyTEAM Unlimited, which is the online 3-on-3, is returning with, quote, new ways to compete. I avoid MyTEAM in MyTEAM Online because, I have a hit and miss experience with My Career Online, the connected modes in My Career, so I'm not going to do it with people who spend money to get all the Galaxy Opals and whatnot. Also, we'll be playing for Championship Rings in 2K21. No further details as yet on what that entails as far as features of that mode. We know what a Championship Ring is, obviously. And we also already knew this, but it's been confirmed that you'll be able to migrate progress from current gen to next gen in MyTEAM. Excellent news. That is the way to do that, especially with the games coming out so close to each other. And also, as a subnote mentions, that Ronnie said a few weeks ago that some cards will have minor differences, possibly because of new gameplay mechanics and different attributes and badges and so forth. But apart from that, the cards and progress will carry across. So some good news there for MyTEAM as well.
No, I didn't get my co-op mode.
No. Well, not that we know yet anyway.
That would have been ideal. My brother and I would have jumped right all over that. That would have been really fun. I would have been able to upload some stuff to my YouTube channel too, because I would have taken highlights. So that's a little bit sad. My opinion on buying your way into cards, and I know that they can't do this because they would lose money, but I'm a fan of earning your way. I don't know about you, but I'm a fan of unlocking based on success, on performance, on and stuff like that. It reminds me, if you can, buy your way, you know how they cut you, like, yeah, you can spend higher on a certain version of the game to get more VC, right? Or more MyTEAM or MyTEAM packs or players and stuff like that.
Yep.
My problem with that is it's like these games that they do now for RPGs. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you can buy your way to level 60. Or you can buy your way to max level.
Yep.
And stuff like that. And it turned my brother off of a couple RPGs that he played because he's like, I spent like a year's worth of playtime to get my character to this, and some Joe Schmo off the street can just put the game on, throw 20 to 30 bucks at it, and they're at the level I am. Right? So, like, stuff like that is a turnoff for me. I think that earning your way is the best way. Like, if you remember correctly, one of the best things about games like the challenge mode in NBA 2K12 was that you had to beat those challenges. You had to earn your way in order to unlock those players and whatnot. And at the time, I didn't have it for PC. I had it for the console and whatnot. And it was really cool to go through those challenges because I had a reward at the end and I felt like I earned it. I wouldn't have felt nearly as good if I could have, bought my way through it.
It's definitely more rewarding, yeah.
Yeah, just something to keep in mind. Like, I know there's different players out there, and I know that everybody has their own time constraints and their life commitments and all of that stuff, and not everybody has the same amount of time. But I'm a firm believer in earning it and not paying your way to get stuff.
I'm totally on board with that, and of course it goes back to the whole predatory mechanics of microtransactions, recurrent user spending that we've talked about, that our Jim Sterling, who we are both fans of, has talked about a lot, and and as he has mentioned before, they're selling solutions to a problem that they've introduced. The level of grind that forces people, or encourages people at least, to buy those packs on top of the gambling addictions and all those kinds of stuff, is that the grind that they put in there, much like the grind in my career, both MyTEAM and my career have this similar approach, is that it's designed to push those mechanics if it can. You don't have to. And this is something that people will say a lot. They'll try to excuse it. They'll say, you don't have to, which is true. But people do, and those people set the competitive balance. That's why I don't want to play MyTEAM online, because I will go up against all those people who have spent a lot of money. And some people, you talk about spending $20 or $30. Some people will spend literally thousands of dollars to get all the best packs. And look, we can go into that in detail and go around in circles and say whether that's a good investment, considering that the new game comes out every year, and in a couple of years you won't be able to use that, go back it anyway because the servers get shut off, whatever. It's people's money, that's fine, but it does upset the competitive balance. It does it in my career, does it even so far in MyTEAM as well, even more so I should say, and of course it upsets the competitive balance. It's very predatory. The odds of packs aren't good. 2K20's pack odds are terrible. It's way too easy to get low cards and doubles when you've still got literally, again, thousands of cards left that you can possibly collect. The odds are just ridiculous. A lot of people have pointed that out this year. It will be interesting to see how they adjust with that going forward, because that comes down to fun as well, fun and frustration and realism and everything. So that's something else that I think they need to address. That remains to be seen, because it is a big moneymaker for them. But it does upset the competitive balance. So it doesn't matter whether, we can all say personally that we don't want to do it. I've got a free $15 from my PlayStation Plus subscription that everybody got it, I believe. That's just there as a thank you for being part of the PlayStation family, whatever. I thought about, do I want to actually, this is basically playing with house money. Do I want to get some VC and get packs? And I thought, well, no, it's a waste of that. I might as well put it towards something else, because it's just not. I don't want to support that business model first and foremost, and second, even if it isn't my money, even if it's free $15 that I didn't have anyway. But I just don't want to do it. I don't want to feed into that. I don't want to support that system. And even if I did, you look at the pack odds, it's just not worth it. So it's $15 down the drain. Yes, $15 that I didn't have, that it's given to me basically free of charge, if apart from my paying the annual subscription. So it's a freebie, kind of. But even so, I don't want to do it, because it's just not going to yield the rewards that are worth it. And that is the big problem, unless you're spending a lot of money. And again, that upsets the competitive balance, and why I won't play MyTEAM online in a nutshell.
As I've said before, we talked about you talked about buying your way to online as well. Is just because somebody's a 90 overall when you're playing online doesn't mean that they're great at the game. But they may appear to get better stats. They may appear to be better, or get better stats, or have a more impact on the game because they bought their way. Yeah. Right? Just because of their overall and their ratings, they can get away with some stuff. And I think, like you had said, the competitive balance is hurt by that. And it's not truly a skill-based system. It's a buy your way system.
Especially in MyTEAM, with all the overpowered cards that you can get.
Yeah, exactly. And, I see the commentary on MyTEAM, and I'm so glad that I stayed away from it.
It's fun if you play offline. You like the competitive mode. Maybe they'll add that. I mean, this is just a very early snippet about MyTEAM. We'll learn about more. Maybe something not to hold your breath on, because they've certainly dragged their feet on making it competitive, or rather cooperative offline so far. But yeah, that is something that we will find out in due course, and we'll find out what the new ways to compete in are in MyTEAM Unlimited. We'll have that information, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks, because again, in a month's time, 2K21 drops on the current gen. In fact, even before the 2020 season is officially over, thanks to the pandemic and the restart just this week. So we will cover that as we get to it. One final thing about this gameplay news is that it wasn't so much news as far as confirming anything for the game, but hints at something they're going to look at adjusting. Mike actually asked Agent 00 what he thought about competitive shooting. They talked about knowing how people complain about full whites and the RNG system, but are people happy with shots only go in when you're green? We talked about that the other week, whether green releases are the way to go. So it is something that they are still looking to balance, to figure out, and I don't know whether they'll get it right this year. It's easier said than done with so many people and with differing opinions on it. But it is nice to hear, Derek, that they are still taking that into account and how to handle shooting in the way that, especially as they try to balance the fun and realism, that they're looking at little mechanics like that and trying to get the best possible solution for everyone.
I'm looking for better shooting mechanics in general. Let's forget about the meter for a second. I'm looking more for more fluid and structured shooting. I've said this before many times. The shooting in NBA 2K20 is incredibly rushed, like the shooting animations themselves, and they're a lot more rushed than the way the players shoot in real life. And I feel like the flow of shooting, the realism of shooting and just like the feel of the shooting was a lot better when in 2K17, 2K16, in 2K15, and 2K14, etc. And even going back to like 2K13, 12, and 11, I feel like the shooting motion felt a lot better. And my brother and I talk about this a lot because we play a lot of competitive games against each other with the meter off. With the rushed shooting, because we do use user timing, it's very inconsistent. It's very hard to gauge it, when they're going to release it and whatnot because it's so rushed. So my biggest thing is not as much about the shot and meter, but it's more about giving us better animations on the shooting.
Yeah, it's all part of it. And if they are soliciting feedback on that, if they are taking that, so much the better, because it is one of those situations as they try to make the game more enjoyable, get that right balance, make it feel good, make people feel happy about playing 2K again. These are the kinds of things that, when people say make the gameplay better, these are the kinds of things, the nitty-gritty of making the gameplay better, all those mechanics. This is what we need to be talking about. So, and if they are focusing on that, if they are taking feedback on that, that is encouraging.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah, and we talk about how so many people just say this game is garbage.
Yeah.
Or this game is trash, and they don't, go into detail about what's bothering them. Something's bothering.
Yeah. I mean, well,
right?
why go into detail? Why go into detail when you can post a reaction GIF?
Yeah, exactly. Or just like a YouTube thumbnail with your mouth wide open, saying, what was 2K thinking? And then you go into the video and they're like, man, this game is trash. And it's like, that's not helping anybody.
No.
But those videos also get a ton of clicks. So.
Beware of clickbait, indeed.
Yeah, hopefully we never go down that road. I don't think we will. So.
I've got bad news for you. No, that is definitely something we will.
Andrew's video with his mouth wide open looking at something, and it's going to say NBA 2K21 news, and it's just going to be a video full of BS.
The first 5 minutes are going to be me rattling on about nothing and asking people to subscribe and share the video. But yeah. No.
Oh my God, those intros are so long. It's ridiculous.
So we will try to avoid. I think we'll be able to avoid being those kind of content creators. We will cover more news as it comes out. The other news, which is the just kind of news, I suppose, this week, at least as far as I'm concerned, you may feel differently, is the soundtrack was revealed earlier in the week. There's going to be 52 songs in the current gen version at launch. There's going to be over 200 in the next gen version, so you won't be spoiled for choice, I suppose. It's going to cover a few different genres, pop and rock and hip-hop and R&B, etc. We do have a track list. It's there in the wiki now. I've also posted it in the forum. A lot of familiar artists, Derek. The Weeknd, let's see, Denzel Curry has been in there before. I believe the Strokes have been. a lot, and Travis Scott naturally, a lot of familiar faces, familiar names, I should say, and familiar styles, familiar sounds. I gave it a listen on Spotify. It's on Spotify except for a few of the tracks. Damian Lillard, current gen cover player, of course, is also going to be contributing a few tracks. So I've listened to a few of listened to the whole thing actually before I started recording this evening / early morning when I'm doing this MyTEAM. You know what? I don't have any strong feelings about it. It was fine. I had it on in the background when I was playing with Kenny. We played a couple of online games, as I believe I alluded to before. It just faded into the background. The sound it's kind of some interesting choices. A lot of songs with explicit lyrics that are going to be the radio edit, which is going to sound, as it always does, a little bit weird. I'm not really disappointed. It's nice to see a few familiar names in there. Red Cafe had a song, I believe, Virus, in NBA Live 2004, so that's kind of nostalgic there. Yeah, you know what? I'm fine with it. I never really have a problem with the soundtracks, as I've said on previous shows and in articles and forum posts. It just kind of fades into the background for me, so I'm not particularly upset by it. I think it's going to be fine. At the same time, I didn't really hear anything that really stood out to me, like, oh, that's going to be a new favorite song that sticks in my head. But yeah, you know, it's a soundtrack, and people can mute it if they want.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that I talked about this. You know, NBA 2K, the Twitter account put out a post. You know, what music would you like to see on 2K21? They put this out about a month ago, and basically, all people were asking for was what the popular artists are today, quote unquote popular artists are today, and that's who they were going to put on there anyway. So like Travis Scott and The Weeknd and all of that stuff. That's basically what the comments were made up of. So I mean, it's cool that they put that out there and like got engagement and stuff like that, and that's good marketing, right? NBA Live should do stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
It didn't change anything. It's like this is what they're going to put on.
Yeah, so, I wanted to see somebody like, oh yeah, I want some Bach on there. I want some Beethoven. Let's get some classical music into the game. We didn't really see any of that. So yeah.
I didn't see any requests for Ted Nugent or anything like Van Halen. Like I didn't hear. Although they did have Sammy Hagar Can't Drive 55.
Yeah.
On 2K18.
Def Leppard. Pour some sugar on me. Yeah.
Yeah, there was some. You know, there was some stuff. 2K18 soundtrack wasn't the worst.
No.
Actually. But as far as like the soundtrack thing, I have mixed feelings about this. So every day, listeners, you're going to think I'm crazy and that I'm obsessed and there's something wrong with me. But every day I wake up, so my brother lives with me, and we have this like a surround sound Bluetooth speaker. And what I do is I put the speaker in the middle of the living room while I'm cooking breakfast and whatnot, and I hook it up to my phone, and I have an old soundtrack playlist for all the NBA 2K and NBA Live games. You mentioned Red Cafe Virus. That's actually on my playlist. But what we do all the time is we listen to those old NBA 2K11 soundtracks, the 2K10, the 2K12, and some of that underground music that was on there, and it brings back so many memories, and there's so much nostalgia, and we laugh about it, and it makes us think about moments in the game, right, that we enjoyed.
For sure.
And everything. And like you had just said, you know, there's nothing that's going to stand out and probably be memorable on the new games. I really have mixed feelings about these like 50 to 100 to 200 song soundtracks that have basically all just the mainstream artists on it, you know, the popular artists. I miss shorter soundtracks with more underground music, and I think it makes the games more unique. It adds to the nostalgia later on and all of that stuff. I miss the days when the games only had 20 to 30 tracks, because you'd hear more of those tracks more and stuff, and it added to the memories. So I have mixed feelings about these long soundtracks with all the you know, the popular artists. I wish they would go back to putting some more underground stuff on there.
200 songs seems incredible, really. It's that's several albums worth, to say the least, of of music in a video game.
Yeah, and in NBA 2K17 and whatnot, they only had about 50.
Yeah, which is what current gen is launching with 52, although more will be coming post-release, as they did with 2K20. I didn't really notice the songs. I didn't pay that much attention to it. I believe, and which I know I'm doing a site that covers these things, but at the same time, it's not really something I think a lot of people around our way, our little corner of the internet, really care about that much, especially with modding, since you can put your own songs into the game. But it's one of those things that a lot of people mute. I saw a lot of comments, more negative than ours, about how they were just, well, I'm going to mute that as soon as I get the game. And that's the thing. If you don't like any of the music, you can just go mute. A mute all option would be nice if that's in the game or not. That would be very handy for people who just want to not have to untick, especially 200 songs worth of going down the menu. And you can put your own music on in the background, so it's not like you're not stuck with it. It's not it's not like Bart versus the Space Mutants, where the Simpsons theme is playing 20 odd times, 50 loops in the first level. There it is.
And there's the Bart versus the Space Mutants
but at least this week it was kind of relevant. I was able to tie it into a video game soundtrack. But it's some people are going to get more upset, which I understand. I think you and I, being in our 30s, a lot of this stuff is aimed at a younger crowd. That's fine. Like I say, I end up enjoying some of the songs, or enjoy them enough that I don't have to switch them off. I don't think I've ever really switched a song off. Not even Stress from 2K13, if you can believe it. I didn't even disable that song, which I probably should have.
An actual stressful song.
Yes. Aptly named. I'll give you that, Justice. That was quite aptly named.
Remember the song, I think it was like Bees. I'm trying to... there's... I can't think of the name of it.
Which game?
I can't remember. I think it was 2K11 or 2K12. I'd have to go back and look at it. I'll say this, that some of the songs back then, like Pouring It On, like some of the songs back then what was it, Friendly Fires? That song?
Skeleton Boy, yeah.
Skeleton Boy, yeah, exactly. Yeah. The songs like that. We went over soundtracks recently and stuff like that. Though I have so many memories of those games in those songs and stuff like that. So, but yeah, one thing that I was just thinking about is I think it will be incredibly disappointing if NBA 2K21 for PS5 doesn't have an intro. I know that they did away with it for the last 3 years, but this is a big deal going on to this gen, and an intro and a really super exciting intro would help bring in the new generation. And I think
agreed.
Implement where you could turn it off in the presentation options, where you say display on intro video on boot up, and that would be really easy to implement. So I think it would be an absolute shame if they didn't have an intro video.
We've talked about that before, how it gets you hyped up to play, how much it plays into our nostalgia of games, even right up to something like 2K17, which Shady, of course, made that intro, and you can engage with the community. You can get the community to put together those assets, because you have a lot of great video creators in the community, like Shady. So it's definitely something you can do and really engage with the community. And then, of course, when the game comes out, it is part of the whole hype of turning the game on and getting you in the mood, even if you don't watch the whole thing all the way through each and every time. It's worth doing, especially if you're outsourcing it to someone in the community. I agree. I think if you are launching on the new generation, it's a great thing to bring back. It'll be nice and familiar, nostalgic in its own right. Even though it's only been missing for a couple of years, it's still something that people will notice. It will be a nice way to tip off that new generation and really show off the game. And you look at the intro for 2K14. That's and where it comes up in 17 years in the making, and all this stuff, and the dramatic music, and all the great cinematography. I don't even know what I was going for there. The cinematic angles and everything, the cinematography. There you go. Of that intro was just spectacular, just like the OMG trailer. And so even going back to it now, it looks great, and again the music and everything just so well done that I'm totally with you on that one. Bring it back, because it is such a throwback to those fun times. And again, you can outsource that to the community, which not only gets the community involved, but also saves you a bit of work, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple reasons why I don't think they may not do it. Is one, like you had stated, they post it on social media and get the reactions off of that, which wasn't as prominent before. And the other issue is that we hear about recently, as far as one of the biggest things with PS5 is, we're cutting down on loading times. We're cutting down on interruptions.
Yeah.
Cutting
True.
down on this and that. And so those are those two reasons are the reasons that I believe they may not do it. But I still think it would be a shame, and that, like I said, they could implement an option to turn it off.
Yeah, or even if it's a one-time boot thing for the first-time boot, kind of like that in 2K11, the first if you've got no data there, and if you delete your data file, you can watch it again. How it goes straight into the 1991 finals with and it's following Jordan down the tunnel. He turns around and says, "You ready?" and things like that. If it's a one-time thing, and then maybe you have an option to rewatch the intro in the menus, or as you say, disable it after that first time if you wish. Or if it pops up when you in that first boot, do you want to do you want the intro to keep coming up or something like that? You can push that. You can have a push notification, so to speak, that would help gamers make that decision straight away without having to dig through the menus and everything, because that's something people don't always do. We talked about that when we talked about sliders. People don't always look for these options in the games. They just take it as it comes. So, but you could definitely have so many ways of handling that, but it would be a very nice throwback. I totally agree.
Yep, exactly. And slider-wise, the thing with that is the large majority of players never touch them. So
apparently yeah.
Difficulty. Just choose a difficulty level and they just play. So, and, there's definitely slider snobs out there. There's people that like, oh, you can fix all the problems. You just have to mess with the sliders, or stop complaining if you're not going to mess with the sliders. But the bottom line is that a lot of people, and the majority of people that play the games, don't want to mess with the sliders.
Or as we said, can't, because they're playing My Career or online. So yeah.
Right, or the mode they're playing is they can't, they can't mess with them. So yeah, exactly. So like I brought up this example before. There's about 5 people that I work with that play NBA 2K, and I've talked to all of them, and every single one of them said that they just choose a difficulty level and play. Right, and I believe I did a poll on this about a year ago, and I got a few hundred responses, and the majority of people said that they don't mess with the sliders. So, and by the way, I'm in the NLSC community, right? And a lot of people follow me from that community. So you would think that even the people that mess with them might be more, because those are more hardcore gamers at times. So,
and we're seeing less discussion over there in the forum as well. We're seeing less people seeking out those ways to fix the game.
On Operation Sports as well. Think about how big Operation Sports is in basketball discussion.
And that surprised me about OS. Yeah, that surprised me about OS as well. I mean, you've got Shady Mike, obviously, who's doing it in our forum, and others contribute here and there. And you've posted some movement sliders as well. But it's nowhere near what it used to be. Not just people posting their own sliders, but even people just asking for sliders and asking for. It still happens, but not to the degree. If you go back through the old NBA Live days. And I suppose the games have come a fair way since then. And yes, people are also playing online or My Career, whatever, and they can't change it. MyTEAM, but at the same time, it really has disappeared. And if it's disappearing from OS as well, and maybe even Reddit, I haven't really looked at a lot of the sliders. I don't think I've seen many slider suggestions on Reddit when I've glanced in there. It's something that people just aren't doing. And if they don't know about it, they're not necessarily going to look at those options. So you do need to push those options on people to a certain extent to let them know that they're there.
There's only like 6 or 7 threads, I think, on Operation Sports, and they're not even like really active. So it is. It's not just the NLSC. It's in general. So yeah, there's you and I talked about this. There are slider snobs out there. There are people that say, that also think that they're super experts and that they can change the game dramatically with sliders and all of that stuff and fix all the issues and everything, which you can't.
When it's engine-based, yeah.
Yeah, when it's engine-based, exactly. But at the same time, I encourage anybody to try to make their experience better and more memorable by messing with them.
Yeah,
I think that
you
can make it, if sluggishness is a problem, you can raise acceleration and lateral quickness and other movement sliders and stuff to make it a little bit more responsive. You can lower body up sensitivity in order to cut down on some of the two-man animations and stuff like that, so that you can curve some issues and try to make the game more enjoyable. So I encourage people to mess with sliders.
Absolutely, and it's I'm sure we'll come back to that. And as 2K21, maybe that's something that we could lead. Again, we tried that slider thread, the sticky topic earlier this year, and it might be worth coming back to that as well. But definitely worth, since those options are in the game, if you can play around with them, it's good to know that they're there.
Or maybe the game will be perfect, Andrew.
I mean, it's possible, but
I
it's a very high bar to set, even with the technology as it's going to be in next gen. But we shall see. We shall cover more news as it comes through in the coming weeks. It's probably going to start coming through more than a trickle. Again, less actually a month and a couple of days away from release. So it's might have to start doing our countdown game again in the forum. Might be a bit of fun there. But one game that won't be coming out is, and we knew this, we pretty much figured this, but it's more or less been officially confirmed by the latest financial reports and also the coming soon section on the official EA website. There is no NBA Live 21. If you were holding out hope for that, it's not coming. It's not scheduled. It would be incredibly surprising if they did an about face and suddenly announced it. So I think we can take it as read. I think probably by the time this podcast comes out, I'll have a news post about it, just putting it out there as an official announcement, as official as it's going to get, because as we've said before, they're not really addressing the situation through the official social media channels. But NBA, no NBA Live 21. We expected this, Derek, but it is to see it there in black and white in the financial report, in its absence from its absence from the coming soon games, the upcoming releases on the official EA website. It's kind of a shame because it means that the NBA Live is first and foremost maybe nowhere close to where it needs to be, where they feel they can be competitive and put it out there as a launch title for the new consoles. And it also means it slides further and further from relevance. And as we've said before, we really need that second game because there's a lot of things that 2K has been doing that maybe we hear about this new direction, going for fun and everything. That's great, but I don't see them backing away from the things like the grind, like the microtransactions that have been plaguing the game for a few years now. They're not going to back away from that. They have no incentive to. They have even less incentive with no competition. We really need it live in that space, and it's very hard to keep the faith to really believe that NBA Live can make a comeback. They've got NBA Live mobiles going strong, whatever. Not really our thing, and that's relaunching with the new season. Wonderful, fantastic. If you enjoy that, that's fine. Not our thing. If it's yours, that's great. But we really do need that console game, that AAA release, that fully featured release, and it would just be a damn shame if that is the only way that NBA Live lives on through the mobile space, especially because we do need it for 2K to have that competition so they can keep each other honest, as we've said so many times before. But it's not surprising, Derek, but it is dismal news to see it more or less official.
It's disappointing, and in the suits should be embarrassed. They should be embarrassed about the way they handled the series over the last decade plus. They should be embarrassed about their lack of social media engagement, about the false promises, about leading fans on, like we talked about with their most recent Twitter post. This could have been a 2-year development cycle for NBA Live 21 because they didn't come out with NBA Live 20. They could have been working on this. They had bones in place with Live 19. As we talked about, it got reviewed well, over a 7, I believe a 7.7 or something like that from IGN. There was some positive comments about when that game was released. They finally had some structure in place that they could work with, and then they dropped the ball. It's incredibly disappointing, and I'll say this again. I'm not trying to win any favors with anybody. I'm not, a social... a kiss butt social media influencer. I'm not trying to be a game changer or anything like that. They should be absolutely embarrassed. Yep. It's as black and white. It is as in black and white as that. They dropped the ball. Yeah,
that's no other way of putting it. And it's pushing the game further and further from relevance. We're already years removed, over a decade removed from when NBA Live was last competitive, was last considered as a good game. And we've talked about NBA Live 10 before, and having played it a bit recently to get some footage and screenshots for features, reminded that it was such a good foundation that it really could have been competitive over the past decade. But then, of course, NBA Elite 11 and the rest is history. And it's just such a shame. It's such a shame that the comeback attempts were so mishandled, with the team getting reassembled so many times, with the change of direction, just when they seemed to be getting the right stuff together again. And it's a shame for a series that was once the brand leader. And people forget that there are genuinely good NBA Live games out there. In the first 10 years or so of NBA Live, up to 06, at least on the PC version, PC, PS2, Xbox version, they were doing really well. Maybe a couple of rough releases here and there as they were making that transition around in the early 2000s, but by the mid 2000s they were right there. They were still outselling 2K, even if some of the 2K games were getting better rated. But they were still doing things like All-Star Weekend and Dynasty Mode, innovating and putting out a really quality product, especially once we started adjusting those sliders, the aforementioned sliders. People were really enjoying those games. I have many great memories of the 2004 to 06 period. I think that was like the second golden era, I would call that, of NBA Live. We talked about that on the 25th anniversary of NBA Live show, and in my retrospectives I've touched on that as well, and I think a lot of people agree with that sentiment when they look back, and you see a lot of nostalgia there. But that nostalgia is long gone. It's certainly a long time since we've had that kind of nostalgia for an NBA Live release to that extent. It's just disappointing because people really did love the NBA Live series, us included, myself included, and that nostalgia is so far in the past, and people do forget that NBA Live was ever good, or the brand leader, or up there, and definitely competing with any other game that you might mention year to year, when we did have all those games coming out, as we've talked about before.
Yeah, it wasn't just good; it was great, and it was really well received. And it was the leader in modes, and it was the leader in content. It was the leader in innovation in the basketball gaming space. And just, I can't believe this has gone on for so long. And it would be one thing if they stayed communicative, during this process, like they said they would, by the way. And it'd be one thing if Live 19, didn't have a strong base, and it was another flub of a release, and it didn't get received well at all and stuff. You would almost say, you know what, if they were communicative and they were like, you know what, we're canceling, and we need to rethink the series and all of that stuff, and they communicated through this entire time and it made sense, then I would say, you know what, at least they're telling us what's going on, and it gives hope that they may reboot and really put effort into it next time. But it's just another case of lack of communication, not building off of a strong base, because Live 19 had a strong base, much like Live 10 did, and just dropping the ball again. And it's not fair. It's not fair to the customers.
No,
it's not fair to the fans and the fans of the series, or people that were waiting on something, any communication about the series.
I mean, people would still be skeptical, of course, because of the track record over the past 10 years. But at the same time, if they were hearing about it, maybe seeing a few snippets here and there about what they were working on, I think we threw that out there when EA Play was coming up. If they've got anything to show, then they should show it. They didn't show anything. So, again, I know we were perhaps setting ourselves up for disappointment there by even broaching the topic, bringing up the idea that they might have something to show. Although I don't think we really believe they would, given the situation. But all the same, it speaks volumes. The silence is deafening. That was even the name of one of the shows when we were talking about that lack of communication, the lack of seeing anything from the show, from EA Play or anything on Twitter, whatever. It's disheartening. It's hard to really stay optimistic about it. It's getting to the point where, I mean, I've played NBA Live for as long as pretty much, I guess, anybody else in the community. Well, I can make that. It's not supposed to be a boast, but I mean, I go back with the series a long way, as other people do in the community and around the internet of basketball, the wider community of basketball gamers, as you do. And yeah, it's hard to really believe that the series will make a comeback at this point, because the comeback has been so botched over the past decade. We've missed games here and there, which has just hurt the brand. It's still there. The door somehow, as we've said before, is not slammed shut on it, because people still want that competition to 2K, that alternative. So they're not dead yet, as far as their reputation isn't ruined to the point where nobody wants to see NBA Live anymore, because people definitely do, if only because 2K hasn't been able to satisfy them over the past few years. At the same time, it's very hard to believe that it's going to make a comeback, that it's ever going to reach the level that it is, that it's going to be the kind of game we want it to be. We could see NBA Live, again, continuing as something like a mobile title, or maybe a pseudo street game, and a pseudo NBA Street title, especially with the move towards the one and the streets side of the one in particular. That's the kind of thing we're seeing. It's hard to believe or trust that it will happen. I know there are very talented people working on it. I know some of the people working on the game still, and I know they really want to do right by the community and get this great product out there. But there's just been so many false starts, and again, 2 years taken off. The silence is deafening. We're not hearing about it. I'm kind of, as much as I don't want to give up on the series, as much as I still want to push through content on it to some extent. We're doing the 25th anniversary of NBA Live stuff is ongoing, and also get that feedback and send it through to the people I know on the development team. You kind of almost have to move forward assuming that 2K is going to remain the only game, the only title in the sim gaming space, because it's getting harder to believe that Live is going to be able to come back or even make the attempt.
I want to bring up 2 points. One, I want to say, and a shout out to Namo, Gamo, Josh, and Dave, and whatnot. It's sad when a game like Basketball Classics, which they did such an amazing job, with that game. We've talked about it extensively, but it's a small developer, right?
Yeah.
They do a great job at interacting with people. They do a great job with communicating and all of that stuff, and it's really it's great for them, but it's really sad that NBA Live, with the history of that franchise, can't even get close to the communication that Josh and Dave put out for Namo, for Basketball Classics. And so that's, a shout out to them, but it's really, I find it that the suit should be embarrassed. EA Sports should be embarrassed for the handling of the series. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was, you ever think about how the NBA might feel about gaming? About how they feel about multiple players in the space? Do you find that maybe it's easier because it's more concentrated on one title, maybe easier for the NBA as far as they only have to communicate with 2K, and that's who's promoting their product and stuff like that, and they don't have all of these outside companies and outside forces coming in and also trying to do the same? Like, do you ever?
I hadn't thought of that, but it makes sense that you're not having to deal with two competing entities for your time and everything, and both trying to do the NBA in their own way. But at the same time, I think if they wanted to, they could go exclusive if they wanted to, and 2K would at this point would definitely jump on that. EA probably would as well, but 2K might have the more. The 2K the Visual Concepts would probably have more likely to put the money down, considering that 2K is such a big moneymaker for them that I could see EA letting Live go. Basically, some might argue they already have. That remains to be seen. The future is very much up in the air, sadly. So I feel if the NBA really didn't want to deal with it, they would just go exclusive like the NFL did. But I think there probably is some appeal to it. Certainly having only deal with one entity, one developer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was thinking too. And I think that's also maybe the reason the NFL did it in general. I think that maybe they'd sign that exclusive deal with EA Sports because they knew where their, gaming marketing was going to come from. They only had to deal with that one with that one company, etc. Give them all that, the information that they need and all of that stuff. And I can imagine that it definitely is more work on the league if there's more competitors in that space. So just something that I was thinking about.
It goes back to with EA having the NBA license, that at the moment, they've got NBA Live Mobile, so they're not doing literally nothing with it. But as far as having that AAA game, a console release, a PC console game, that the traditional NBA Live game, if they're not going to do that, you look what they did with Jam on Fire Edition when they took the year off from. They didn't have NBA Live 12 that year. NBA Elite 12 or whatever they're going to end up calling that. They decided they were going to take that year off and put On Fire Edition out there as the follow-up to the 2010 reboot of NBA Jam, which of course was going to be packaged with NBA Elite 11, and then became its own standalone title on all platforms. So if they're sitting on the Jam license, the Live license obviously, and the Street license.
Don't get me started on the disrespect for NBA Jam.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that.
It's and absolutely. The 25th anniversary came and went, did for Live as well, obviously, except for our content. They've got those licenses. They could be doing something, even if it's a remastered On Fire Edition with current players. It would sell. Playgrounds sold, and I know that you have a much higher opinion of Playgrounds than I do, or 2K Playgrounds 2. I still think On Fire Edition is the superior game mechanically. It's got the Jam name. It does things that I prefer to the way Playgrounds does them. It would sell. It would compete with Playgrounds, especially if it came out in alternating years. If it was just something with that, or a new Street game, to use the NBA license on a console release to at least keep EA basketball relevant and in people's minds. And so when they come back with Live, they think, well, actually, they've done a pretty good job with Jam and or Street, or both, if they wanted to alternate those for a couple of years. You know, they're handling basketball pretty well. Let's see how they're doing in the sim space again. Just the relevance, keeping EA Basketball's brand relevant, talking about it on social media, doing throwback content in lieu of new stuff, and then maybe some hints to things that they're working on. We talked about this. We did a whole show on it. How they could be keeping it relevant, and without that, it's hard to believe. Once again, not to harp on the point, but it is hard to believe in the product moving forward when they don't even seem to be interested in engaging. And that's what
never change, Andrew. You know what will never change? That people want to have fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at what 2K's saying. People want to have fun.
Right.
Yeah.
People want to have fun. And NBA Jam titles and arcade titles done right are fun. And there's always going to be a space for that type of game. And like you said, even if they weren't going with a full-fledged NBA 5-on-5 title, which can be a lot more work, right?
Yeah,
a lot more depth,
yeah.
a lot of stuff. So why not go for that 2-on-2 full-court experience or 3-on-3 full-court experience? Why not bring ideas back that worked well in the past, like NBA Hoops and NBA Showtime, NBA on NBC? Why not do stuff like that? Because the bottom line is human beings want to have fun.
Yep.
And those games are fun if they are done right. So, yeah, I agree. I think it honestly, it's a damn shame.
It is, yeah. We've broached that topic of fun, obviously, and those games that are maybe lean towards more cartoonish side. So I'd like to get into that just before we wrap up, because that was something else we were going to touch on this week. But before we get to that, as far as NBA Live goes, putting the question to you bluntly, point blank, do you think we'll see another NBA Live game ever, apart from NBA Live Mobile?
I do.
You do?
I do. I think we'll see one. Maybe. I think we might see an NBA Live 2022, and I think the reason is because we just talked about it earlier. There's still that room, right?
Mm.
The idea, if an NBA Live title comes out, or they announce that an NBA Live title will come out, even people that are cautious, or even people that bash it, they're going to take a look at it. And these companies know that people will still take a look at it. I don't care how...
Curiosity will be there, yeah.
Yeah, the curiosity will be there. And if, some influencers and whatnot, tout it, and it actually, they say it's fun, maybe people will get their hands on it. And then when people get their hands on it and they find it fun, they'll tell their friends. So that aspect is still there. I think that the space is still open, and 2K doesn't have the exclusive license. I do think that Live is going to try to come out with something on PS5. It's possible that they're waiting just 1 year of, to get another year of development in there. But that doesn't change the fact that they've dropped the ball again. Even if they come out with something, and even if that something is strong, the suits have really screwed up over the last decade plus.
It's a long way up out of that hole. Is what we're getting at, I think.
I'm curious. I mean, you and I are both, we played the NBA Live series and EA Sports basketball games since their inception. What do you actually think that they're going to come out with something?
What you say makes a lot of sense. It is my hope, my cautiously optimistic hope that it happens. It makes a lot of sense. It would be, if they can come back strong, as we said, as you just said there is the potential for it to work. There is that space, there is the people who want the alternative, but you ask me, I don't know. For the first time in all these struggles over the past 10 years, I really don't know if they will come out with another one. I'm not going to say they won't. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, it definitely won't. But this is maybe the first time that, and you can probably hear it in my voice, everyone, the disappointment and the almost defeatist attitude, which I don't like to have, but yet still feel. You asked me that question, Derek. I don't know. I don't know if they will. I couldn't say for sure. It is the most doubt I've ever felt in all my years playing and covering the NBA Live series.
I have more hope that we get an NBA and more optimism that we will get another NBA Live more than I have an optimism that we're going to get a Playgrounds 3.
Yeah, well, with Saber Interactive moving on to WWE Battlegrounds, yeah, I don't think we're getting another Playgrounds anytime soon.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of a shame because we talked about good bones and we talked about some good concepts and ideas and stuff like that. I think Playgrounds had it.
Oh, well, time to bring back NBA Jam again. That's all we said.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, just to let you know. And by the way, I absolutely could think that they would fold the series. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they did that with NBA Live. But
it's not unthinkable.
I do believe they could release one. So
fingers crossed, and we've said that so many times. But at the moment, that's all we can do. But no NBA Live 21. That much we know for sure, unless there's a very surprising announcement over the next couple of weeks. And I'm not holding my breath or crossing my fingers on that. But certainly for the future of the series. Yeah, I would love to be wrong, and maybe by setting my expectations low, it will be a very pleasant surprise at some point in the not too distant future, hopefully. But we brought up the fun that you can have, and with the more cartoony games and the wacky games, and some of them very cartoonish, as we'll touch on in a moment. But yes, that's why I love to see Jam come back. I have a lot of nostalgia for Jam. Street as well, but Jam was the game that I grew up with. Obviously, being that bit of an older gamer there. Love those games. There's definitely room for them in addition to the sim space. I've always felt that. I feel that and still believe that today. It's why Playgrounds has been as successful as it is, even though it's not necessarily the game that I wanted it to be, but it is still, as you say, a lot of good bones there, a lot of a good basis for good arcade action. There is room to have those alternative experiences, those arcade games, because as much as I love the real NBA, maybe a little less than I used to as far as the current generation is concerned, as much as I'd like to have that realistic representation of basketball, and as I know you do, but we also really enjoy having that alternative experience the aforementioned alternative experience that you can just be a little bit silly with, and certainly when it goes very cartoony, as some of the games have, Jam and some other titles, it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and people want to have fun. People want to create memories. They want to have laughs. They want to have zany fun sometimes. I mean, we've talked about this. Look at Rocket League.
Yeah.
What is Rocket League?
It's crazy, but it's a lot of fun, yeah.
It's insane. There's no realism in Rocket League. There's not. I mean, it's insane fun. And
you've never played soccer in a rocket car?
No, I haven't. And
missing out, man.
But I tell you what, it sounds fun.
Yeah.
If I had the right car, maybe I'd try it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that Rocket League is a perfect proof of, that people still just want to have fun. And, the song Girls Want to Have Fun, people just want to have fun.
Gamers want to have fun. Basketball gamers want to have fun.
Gamers want to have fun, right. Maybe we'll do a remix of that song without us singing.
With apologies to Cyndi Lauper, yeah.
Exactly, with heavy apologies to Cyndi Lauper, exactly.
I mean, I bring up NBA Jam, and that is the classic. But we were talking about it before we started recording, and you brought up games like Looney Tunes B-Ball on the Super Nintendo. And was that also on Genesis as well?
I had it for Super Nintendo. There's 3 cartoon basketball games that I grew up with that got a ton of play. The one that got the most play was Tiny Toons Acme All-Stars, and this game had soccer, basketball, and I think one other sport. It may have been just soccer and basketball, though. No, there was one other sport. I can't remember what it was. But basically, we only played the basketball mode, and you had about 10 different Tiny Toons that you could choose, and it was 3-on-3 full court. And it's just wild. You had power-ups and stuff like that. It was just wild basketball fun. You had about 5 different venues you could, play on. And, I always had my lineup of, it was like Montana Max, the Calamity Coyote, and Roadrunner. And I would run with, Hampton and Roadrunner. And I would run with those guys every time, and we would just have a blast with those games. And then Looney Tunes B-Ball, and then Space Jam. Space Jam was not very deep, but you could play against another human, and it was always Space Jam versus, the Toon Squad versus the Monstars. But those games they still hold a place in the genre. Like they still, I think if they came out with games like that again, with cartoon characters and stuff like that, I still think that they could make somewhat of a splash.
I mean, people look at it and they think, well, if it's not 2K, it won't succeed. I think that's wrong, because the original Playgrounds that wasn't under the 2K banner did. And you look at some of the things that have been done with independent games, with indie games now. We obviously mentioned Basketball Classics here, how that's brought back that retro experience. If people were to bring back something like this, I think it would find an audience, because it is something different. It's basketball. If it's fun, and it comes back to that word. It feels like a cliche that we're overusing the word, but it is at the end of the day what it comes down to. If it is that enjoyable experience on the sticks, if it is something that is fun, that is basketball related, people will give it a look. I just looked up that game actually, Tiny Toon Adventures. Acme All-Stars. So it had basketball, soccer, bowling, and an obstacle course, and Montana hitting, which is kind of like whack-a-mole, apparently. Probably bring back some memories there if you play those other modes. But those kinds of things, I mean, they sound antiquated now, but they will find an audience, because you look at what a lot of the indie games have done. It's clear that people do want those experiences that maybe the AAA companies are not really focusing on, and yet if a AAA company did focus on it, they could, with all their resources, I mean, they'd probably also whack it full of microtransactions as well, which maybe Montana Max with microtransaction mode, that'd be that might be appropriate actually if they bring that with Tiny Toons. Were they going to? Do I remember right? Were they actually going to reboot Tiny Toons recently?
I hope not. They rebooted Doug and it was terrible. No, I would hope they wouldn't reboot Tiny Toons. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I wanted to point something up though. There's an untapped demographic here that is at stake and at play. So you've heard of Mario Tennis, right?
Yeah.
They relaunched Mario Tennis recently, and it was incredibly popular. Do you know how popular tennis is in comparison to basketball? Not very, right? It's not. But people love those Mario Tennis games, and they sell by the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, Mario Tennis probably sold in the millions. And my point is, if the concept of Mario Tennis can work, and that untapped demographic of, preteen or young teen or even younger, because we know all kids at all ages are playing games. Christ, you and I were playing when we were like 8. You know what I mean?
Yeah, even younger. Yeah.
Whatnot. That entire those are games that parents want to buy their children.
Yeah.
Right? Or even play with their children nowadays and whatnot. Those basketball games, if they did a Mario concept, or they made another Looney Tunes concept, because the Looney Tunes are still popular today and they're well known. If they did, or even maybe with some of the new cartoons that came out, which I'm not a fan of pretty much anything new that came out for cartoons. They're not close to what we grew up with. But if they made games like that today, there is a demographic for those. People would, parents would buy those. And like I said, I think games like Tiny Toons, Acme All-Stars, Looney Tunes, B-Ball, Space Jam, and stuff like that, they still play very well. The mechanics can still be really fun. And hell, they're still fun to me today, like if I go back and play them.
And you could really lean into that whole family-friendly, kid-friendly, fun for the whole family angle, especially if you, and not to harp on microtransactions, because I know I've talked about it in so many podcasts and so many articles, but it is an ongoing problem with gaming in 2020. If you did come out with that game, that smaller game that was less expensive than a 2K, and it's not full of microtransactions, something like what Josh and Dave have done with Basketball Classics, you put that out there that everyone can enjoy, that the parents can be comfortable buying that for kids, because it doesn't come with a damn warning about how it has gambling mechanics or mild gambling mechanics or whatever the hell that warning is now that we've talked about before. That it doesn't have to come with that there's no fear of credit cards being drained and that kind of thing. There's a lot of appeal in that, and you can, if you also have that really fun experience, and it's something a little bit different with cartoon characters or fictional characters. We talk about games like Hoop on NES, Street Hoop. Was it Street Hoops on NES, or Hoops on NES? Games like that have got the fictional characters.
Like you just brought up Street Hoops, right? You brought that up. There's a game that's on Steam that gets a ton of play, and it's just like a street ball game. What is the game? Oh.
Yeah. Because I know the one, because I was thinking Street Hoop for Neo Geo, which just came out on PS4. Freestyle, that's it. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, you can do that.
Ton of playing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just been updated, I believe. So it's definitely that there's room for those smaller basketball gaming experiences, and if you can go cartoony with them, if you're already in the mood to have a less serious, and I say less serious when you see some of the way that the people dress in the park in playground, and you know that some people aren't necessarily taking 2K super seriously, which is fine. You know, those modes are definitely more casual in that respect, and wacky in that respect than the NBA side of things. But there is room to do that as a whole game based around that, and maybe it won't sell 10 million copies like 2K will, and it won't be a huge moneymaker as far as microtransactions, especially if there are no microtransactions in there to begin with. But there's definitely an audience for it, and definitely be an audience for bringing back games like Jam and Street. And it really does come down to putting out that fun experience and that creative experience that that a lot of developers do shy away from because they're wanting to go for the recurrent user spending and all that stuff. But no, I think those games would definitely succeed, no question.
Yeah, I also think that there's something to be said about 3 months after the 2K release, right? I think that what happens is a lot of people start having a little bit of fatigue, or they want to take a break, or they want some separation. And that's where games like Playgrounds come in. And that's where a game like NBA Jam could come in. Or even a cartoony basketball game is during that time where it's not a fresh experience anymore with the new NBA title, with the new simulation title. A lot of those people, even Troydan just... I think he tweeted out, he said, we need a new experience, or we need a new game, or we need something different to play at this point, because 2K20 has run its course for a lot of people. I think that this is where those other titles can get, can come into play, and people can get that different experience.
But you could even almost call them palate cleansers in a way, that it's just something between meals of 2K, because 2K's modes do encourage so much engagement that you do stick with them, which is for the best. That's what's so great about those modes. But at the same time, when you do need a break, but you don't necessarily feel like taking a break from basketball, or you're willing to still play a basketball game, but maybe not the grind of my team or my career or things like that. That's when you would turn to a game like a Street or a Jam or a Looney Tunes B-Ball or Mario Basketball or something like that. That's where it would come in as the palate cleanser.
Right. Look at games like Dota and Smite and stuff like that, which are incredibly popular. Those games are filler games for people. You know what they do? They go on those games and they play for about a half hour or an hour, and then they leave. Right? Yeah. That's basically what they do. They don't play those games for full, 2, 3, 4, 5 hour online sessions, or, full My League games and stuff like that. The beauty of games like the ones we were talking about, Jam, Street, Looney Tunes, B-Ball, Tiny Toons, Acme All-Stars, Space Jam, all that stuff, is you can jump into a game and make some progress in about 20 minutes.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
So you can jump in, and the games are shorter. They're only 3-minute quarters sometimes, or maybe 5-minute halves. You can feel the sense of progress. You can have some fun, and you can get out. It's not that grind. So it is that different experience, and in my opinion, there will always be room in the space for those games.
I think that's why I was always such a fan of the idea of some kind of a standalone All-Star Weekend or mini games in games like NBA Live and NBA 2K even. That you look at something like the Freestyle... Do you remember the Freestyle Challenge in NBA Live, the spin-off of the All-Star Weekend?
I do, yeah.
I mean, that's not...
I haven't looked at it in a long time, but yeah.
I did a way back Wednesday on it, of course I did. It's not a tremendously deep option. All-Star Weekend is the superior mode, because it is trying to ape the actual All-Star Weekend. But it's just a little mini-game that sometimes, if I had 10 minutes to kill and just didn't really feel like playing a full game, but just wanted to muck around in a basketball scenario, a basketball game, I'd go into the Freestyle Challenge and just have a couple of games of that and see if I could beat the CPU in it. And of course, it's a great multiplayer option as well because it's split screen. So little things like that, there's value in those experiences that are not necessarily realistic or aping something that is about the real NBA, like a detailed franchise mode, although they are awesome experiences naturally and something we want to see in the game, and why NBA Live is built so bare bones. But those little mini games in the sim games, or if those concepts are expanded to being something more, and we're seeing more of them on the indie scene with the basketball classics or something like that. But there is that space, and not just that space for another sim game with NBA Live, but arcade games with NBA Jam, and cartoony games and things like that, and other games all comprised of mini games some kind of basketball game that's comprised of mini games, like it's not a great example because it doesn't hold up particularly well, but the NBA All-Star Challenge for the Super Nintendo. It's
I was about to bring up NBA All-Star Challenge.
things like that. Like we don't see those kinds of games anymore, and yet I think, especially since you can do digital releases now and do them for $5 to $10 or whatever, games under $20, digital release only. Those are the kinds of things that you can be looking at, and I think there's value in that because that's just a distraction, and people will say, "Oh, this is fun," and you can get a fair amount of sales doing it that way, and keep the overheads down by digital only.
I mean, we talked about like a new take on old concepts, like even a game like Slam City.
Yeah.
Maybe you make a game that's actually like that, where it's VR and functions similarly, obviously with updated technology. And maybe it's a game where people can jump in and have that fun one-on-one or, arcade type experience, and then they can get out. You know what I mean? Nothing that binds them, nothing that makes them feel like they have to grind. Just a fun and you can still have progress related to it, right? You could still be maybe upping your character and maybe you still have like goals and stuff like that. I'm not saying that
tournament,
it needs to be completely exactly. Because games like Dota and Smite and all of that stuff, those have progress related items to go along with them. But it doesn't need to be this grindy feeling thing. It can just be this fun experience. So
it's something that hopefully some developers will look at, and you again, we can only continue to praise Josh and Dave, and looking forward to getting them on the show again. Sorry, guys, we haven't reached out. We need to set that up for sure. If I forget, definitely hit me up and let me know when you're free, because we'd love to have you on, as I'm sure you agree.
I'd love to talk.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get that sorted out soon. It shows that how they filled a niche, and it was the game that I never knew I wanted, yet I'm so glad that we have. I've said that before at Basketball Classics. I said it's been one of the... I actually, as the last decade just drew to a close, and I did that Friday 5 talking about the most influential games and important games of the decade, I put it on there because and a couple of people asked why, when it's not a AAA release, and said because it was so influential. It is a game that filled a niche that nobody else was doing, this throwback game, and I felt that it was so potentially influential, and moving forward it could be that idea of that you can have a basketball game that is, no, it's not trying to compete with 2K, it's not trying to be this deep sim, and although Basketball Classics has gotten season mode and is becoming deeper all the time, it doesn't have to be your realistic 3D graphics and face scans and competing with 2K. It's its own thing, but it's still a basketball-based experience, very fun. It's going the real throwback route, and maybe the other games will do that as well. But it shows the value. It shows that people are interested. There's a lot of people that are doing seasons on YouTube of Basketball Classics now. There's a few people doing that, and a lot of people talking about the game, which is really great to see. It's not just us, although very proud to be a part of that in the way that we have been. But yeah, it's found an audience. It's resonating with people. Other games can do the same. They'll fill a gap, fill a niche that is not filled by, that Live can't, 2K can't, and yet they will still find an audience and be very fun.
Yeah, Josh and Dave, though, where's my Bugs Bunny game?
Yeah,
I'm waiting for that classic. I'm waiting for that classic 3-on-3 cartoon game. So
you mean with if they don't get the licensing, it'll be Jugs Rabbit, won't it?
Knowing that, so if you want to stick with like the Basketball Classics, what they went for with that. What were some? So I want to see some Nicktoons in basketball. I want to see the Rugrats, or I want to see like Doug or whatnot.
Yes,
I want to see them play.
The Rugrats, the unlicensed the unlicensed knockoffs like Timmy Gherkin. Ron and Stampy. It's just
Sen and Rimpy.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So there are some ideas. Please PayPal us if you come up with those ideas, so you can get our share. But no, it would be great to see more stuff like that, and it's because it doesn't always need to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I just think people want to have fun and create memories, and we've talked about that so many times. And it's also, like we said, what made some of those older, simpler basketball titles so special.
It's a recurring theme, but that's what it comes down to, and it's, again, refreshing. Going back to the top of the show, why it's been so refreshing to hear 2K talking about and hear Beluba talking about it, making the game enjoyable. On one hand, it seems very strange, but on the other hand, it's so very refreshing, and it's what needs to happen. That it's not just about the game that will sell a lot of copies and make money and recurrent revenue, and yes, it is about representing the NBA. But if you're not doing any of that in an enjoyable way, eventually the bubble's going to burst, and eventually you're not going to make a product that you can be proud of. And at the end of the day, developers want to make these games that they will enjoy. It's what the suits want is a whole other matter. Indeed, wrote an article about that. I said very cynically, but I do believe that to some extent that basketball gaming belongs to the suits. I'd love to see the developers and us as an audience be able to take that back to some extent. We're never going to change the industry, or it's going to be very hard to change the industry as far as microtransactions and all that kind of stuff. But we can work around that, I believe, and have and make those memories on the virtual hardwood. It's worth a try, and I think there's a lot of developers that are working towards that. The indies and the AAA with what they're looking to go for with 2K21, or at least it sounds like it. So fingers crossed, and hopefully one day NBA Live rejoins them.
Yeah, exactly. Circling back, it's what I'm excited about is them using that language about finding the balance of fun and realism and finding the perfect balance between the two. So I am optimistic. I'm not, but I'm also, like we had talked about, I'm cautiously optimistic. I know the way it could go, and so just basically fingers crossed.
Only the future knows. That will come to us in time, along with more news about NBA 2K21, of course. Once again, we will cover that as it happens. There'll be news posts on the main page of the NLSC. There'll be posts in the forum, no doubt. We definitely appreciate everybody who helps out with sharing that news in our community, and we'll give credit where credit is due, of course, and we'll be talking about it on future shows. But yes, I guess that's brought us to the end of this week's show. We've kept under 2 hours this week, Derek. I mean, we could keep talking about our favorite subjects such as Fallout and Bart versus the Space Mutants, but perhaps we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I think it's. I know that it's tough for some people to listen to super long shows, so you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours about this stuff. Yeah, exactly. But I think that it's obviously, it's sometimes it's probably tough to listen to on the commute and whatnot. So I think we run a great show, and I just, regardless of however long the show is, I hope that people enjoy the content.
Absolutely, and to that end, we turn the floor over to you, our listeners. Let us know what you thought about this week's show and the topics we discussed, what you're feeling about the NBA 2K21 news, how optimistic or pessimistic you feel about the future of NBA Live, of course, the cartoony games and NBA Jam and NBA Street and everything else that we could possibly go in that genre, and everything else we talked about this week. Let us know what you're thinking in the forum, in the comments section, and of course on social media. Once again, it's been so great to get that more engagement with our listeners, Derek, and hear what people have to say about what we've had to say.
Yeah, definitely make sure that you give us feedback and whatnot. I appreciate all those who do. And whether it be on IG or on Twitter or whatever, reach out if you have any suggestions for the show or any feedback and whatnot. And again, the ultimate goal is that you're enjoying listening to it.
And of course, the NLSC podcast comes out every week on Sundays. It comes out on the NLSC, which is nba-live.com. Also various podcatching apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher, to name some of the big ones. On those platforms, search for NLSC Podcast, look for our logo, and that will be us. Also appreciate any, hopefully, positive reviews of the show on those platforms that allow you to do reviews. Helps with our ego, as we always say, but also visibility as well. So we definitely appreciate some of the reviews that have come there. And if you want to leave us a positive review, maybe we could read some out, Derek, on future shows.
No, absolutely. And if it seems like it would be a really good idea to do like a mailbag, I would have a lot of fun with that. So I think that maybe we can put a mailbag in place or something like that where people can say, ask questions of the show, because I love answering questions from people who listen.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
We've done that before. So I'd like to bring that back. That's a good idea. So hit us up in our various social media platforms, which I'll be reading off in a sec. But yes, once again, the NLC podcast comes out every week. listen to it on your platform of choice. We're going to start posting it on YouTube. You might have seen, if you do subscribe to the NLC YouTube channel, will have seen the episode 280, our Tim Kistro interview, go up there. So there'll be more new episodes going forward, and I'll be getting through the backlog because, once again, over 300 episodes, Derek. It's going to take some time to get all of them on there, but future shows will be going out there, including this one. So if you are listening on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed it, and also hit that subscribe button and like and share, I suppose. But before we get to the socials, Derek, I'll throw it over to you to promote your stuff and where we can find you, and also if you'd like to give an update on your podcast, Holding Court. The floor is yours.
So Holding Court with D for 3 had to be pushed back to August 17th for the first episode, and that's because it, as Andrew knows, it does take time to get on all platforms. So I signed up for Libsyn, a service that can give me an RSS feed in order to push me out to all the, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and whatnot. So that is in the works. I also have a media company actually working with me, onboarding me and stuff like that, and helping me get straightened away. So I wanted to make sure that all I's were dotted and T's were in place before I got it started. So first episode is planned to launch on August 17th, which is a Monday. And now, instead of bi-weekly, the show will be weekly. So that's Holding Court with D for 3. And I'll give updates on our next show as well as far as progress on that. You can also reach me on Twitter at D for 384, over on the NLSC, D for 3. I'm a contributor over there. And on YouTube, D for 3. I'm also a member of the NBA Live Veterans Committee as well.
I am on Twitter at AndrewNLSC. You can follow me there for my takes on basketball gaming, professional wrestling, when I talk about that a little bit, and everything else that I tweet out, all those scintillating thoughts that go through my head, everything that is fit to print anyway. But that is Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Facebook and Twitter at the NLSC. On Instagram, we are NLSC Basketball. On YouTube, we are NBA Live Series Center. Once again, if you are listening to this on YouTube, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button. There'll be more video content coming in addition to the podcast. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. But yes, that is all for this week. Thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Andrew.
I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.